Welcome back to Reality One. This is the podcast where we talk about practical use cases of augmented reality, showing you how the world is going to be very different soon with spatial computing. First of all, we welcome Apple Vision Pro, which has gone out to the world today. Very interesting, and we'll probably touch upon that in this episode. But before we get into it, I just want to welcome Mendel for being our guest today.
Hello there, very excited.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about the airport. This is something Mendel and I are both travelers, so thought it would be pretty opportune for this. So just to take you back on how the episodes and how the podcast comes out, it's kind of like a day in the life. So the first episode we started off in the bedroom, waking up, augmented reality in the bedroom. Then we went to the bathroom. We moved over to the living room. Then we went to gym. We went to the doctor's office. We went on a hike. Now we're actually going to board a plane because we have to go international for a business meeting. We're going to look at all the different ways that augmented reality can be had in the airport. Now, I've got a couple ideas myself, but I think that this episode might be a little bit of a shorter one. However, we'll see whatever happens in this journey. We may come up with some new ideas, or we might end it pretty early, because I think I have maybe 3 or 4. Mendel, I don't know if you have any ideas in your head, but I'm sure you've got some questions and comments in the airport, because you've spent...
I've spent definitely a fair amount of time in the airport, and I've got a flight in 2 weeks.
I think while we're visualizing the character in our podcast day, we're also going to visualize what your trip is going to look like in 2 weeks and how we can see how augmented reality can actually make it easier, more comfortable.
Yeah, of course.
So we'll drive up to the airport, right? Obviously, we've been in a car before. We did augmented reality in a car with augmented navigation. So we already did that a couple episodes ago. So we've done all that, driving up to the airport. We get out, we take out our suitcase, and the first thing that I can think about with augmented reality is coming in. All I can picture is maybe I'm coming a little bit late. I've got suitcases. I'm running in. I've done all my due diligence. I've weighed everything. I've checked everything. But I need to check it again. And when I come into the airport, unless you're one of the people that come in 5 hours early, chances are you're not looking to just chill out, right? You're looking to check in as quickly as possible, get through security as fast as you can, and get to somewhere within the vicinity of your gate within a reasonable amount of time to make your flight.
Yeah.
You're not looking for anything that requires you to pull out your phone and check things. So the first thing that I'm thinking about when I come to an airport is, especially the larger ones, you've got a bank of counters, checkout counters, divided by different airline companies. And most of us do not have our checkout counter on our mobile boarding pass or anything like that. So when you're running in, right, just picture this. You're pushing 2 suitcases. You got your bags on you. You're hoping that your passport's in your wallet or in your pocket. You're looking around. If you're traveling with family, right, you're making sure they're all good. The last thing you want to do is have to find one of those computer screens, check up your airline, your destination, find the airline counter, and then find out, are you going the right way? Is it left? Is it right? Imagine if you could just look right in front of you and have an arrow pointing to the direction you should look, and then having the actual counters that you need to go to highlight, or have some sort of thing that indicates they're exactly here. To me, having something like that would be I come in and I know exactly where to turn. I know where to run to. I know where I'm getting towards. I'm not stressed out looking to see if I can see it on a bank of names and things like that, along with all the other travelers that are streaming in to the front door. Now, the alternative, think about it. Today, when you have a phone, if you want that information, at the very least, you're pulling out your phone out of your pocket. You're going to open up your phone, navigate to the app that maybe has your boarding pass, and then hopefully in your boarding pass, it might have information. But even then, once you find out G27, that doesn't give you a clue of where that is in this airport. You've now got to look left and right. If you can hopefully make out an A and a B on the left side, then you know it's somewhere there. But most of the time, it could be right in front of you. And I've had so many times, and it's exacerbated by the times where I'm late. The last time I took a flight, I was in New York, and it was crazy because just getting there was difficult, right? All the different problems. Then we find out the train in New York was down for repairs. And I arrived, I think 5 minutes after 11, and it was if you come between 7 and 11, you can use our normal air train, but between 11 and the rest of the day, you have to use a separate service. So I'm already really late as it is, and I'm running in, and I think I had to run to 3 different counters because each person was pointing me in a different direction. And I was so late, I think I ended up checking in with like a minute to spare. Like I was literally on the dot, and half of it was the problems, the construction in the airport.
Yes, I guess one of the good things on that note, which you could have as well, is like even a timer. So you know like how much time you have left to check in or to get there, or even if we take it a step back before, like on the way, getting to the airport, obviously how much time there is for check-in. Obviously, there's also different types of people. Some people like to come earlier to the airport, spend some time in the lounge. How much time will you have in the lounge by the time you check in and all of that? I guess it's good to know what that time frame looks like. How long do you have left to check in? How long do you have left once you check in to get through the airport, through security, etc.? How much time you have till you actually need to board the plane until your flight leaves?
Yeah, I think these timers would be really helpful.
Yeah, but you have no idea how busy the airport is. So that's also, I guess, another big thing. If I guess we could somehow within that, you already know how busy, how long are the lines, how long will it take for you, even once you, I guess, check in, put your baggage in, how long will it take to go through TSA or security, customs, whatever it is.
I think timers would be great. And again, even if we did have timers, like all these things of like what it's like in the airport, and we can pull that into a normal app, you're still relying on like pulling your phone out of your pocket. Because most of the time, if you're rushing, even once you put your bags, okay, before you check your bags in, you've got no hands available. Once you put them in, most likely you'll have at least one hand available if you're pulling a carry-on. Getting your phone in out of your pocket, dealing with going through security, having to get your wallet out, things like that. To pull them out to see the time probably makes it more stressful. That's the other thing to say about timers. They can help you be on time, but if it's not the right person, it's not designed right, they can just stress you out. So it's about like figuring out how to do that. But I think that comes to the next bit. And I think the biggest part of augmented reality, which is kind of what we said with the check-in counters, but to a much bigger degree, having where you're going, like as an arrow, it's like indoor navigation almost like take that elevators. And I literally see dots towards that elevators or a line or something on the floor painted. So imagine if that arrow was digital. And if it like looked like it was painted. So let's say you're in a subway, and I'm giving the same example for a subway as you have an airport. You're rushing through something and you're trying to find a terminal, and their goal with the current signage is to make it as simple as possible, right? Make it the letters as legible and or numbers, and all of that is supposed to help you find your way around it. But you're still rushing around, and a lot of times you get onto the wrong platform, into the wrong direction. I'm just thinking about subway in Manhattan. Even when it says, this is the subway to Brooklyn, or this is the subway to Bronx, or enter on this side of the street to get into that side. But even that, when you're in a rush, some of these things we miss. And there's actually happened at the same time of me going to the airport. The sign clearly said it, but I'm so used to going a certain way that some parts of the sign you black out. You're getting the most information. Okay, this is the line I need to take, or this is the street I'm in. Whereas if you had an arrow that literally pointed you at the right subway, or at the right track to get on, or at the right gate, or where you need to go, over here it tell you what to go to the next things. And that's where you can put the timer on. Imagine if you have a little hologram projected onto the floor that made it look like it was painted, but had the information you need, like an arrow of where you want to go, or the path, because I think following a path is much better. Even having a little bit of text you just have to follow with a timer of saying boarding starts in 20 minutes. It gives you those things that when you follow navigation in a car, it gives you certain information. But if you have like this little timer and then like a little thing next to it that says, careful, security, it takes 30 minutes on average at this time, looking over the last 7 days, just be mindful that you're going to come 10 minutes late. You're not pulling your phone and getting more stressed. Then you can like go and approach someone and say, hey, this takes this amount of time. I have only this amount of time. Help me through. Like all those directions and everything, bypassing duty free. All airports are notorious for taking you windy around duty free.
Yeah.
Here, you could go like through the shops. Like
or factoring in if obviously you want to buy duty free, factoring time as well.
Putting in exactly what you want to get. Similar to the shopping one where you talked about, you could have like a list of, okay, I need to buy my family these things from duty free. And it takes you exactly here. We'll get you the fastest possible thing, because at the end of the day, even if you do need to buy something, you've still got a plane to catch. So you want to make sure that you're getting the things that you want as fast as possible, and having an arrow towards them or highlighted. And when they have 20 of a similar product, a little visualization, an arrow pointing at it, or a highlight saying, this is what you want. Imagine you have that, you see 4 things highlighted, you grab, and go.
Of course. Navigation, I think, is a big one, even within the airport. Just an example, last time I was in the airport, I was looking for a lounge and I was following a sign. I think it was actually in Ben Gurion Airport. And there's different, like there's A, B, C, D, and there's different lounges. So I had no idea. I knew I had a lounge pass and I know I could go. And all of a sudden I went to A and that one was closed. I went to B and B was closed and C was also closed. And I had to go all the way down each one and I had to walk back and forth to find out that only the one in D is open. So if that can navigate you right away, that would save a lot of time.
Exactly. I think like you've nailed it perfectly on the head. The first use case of augmented reality in an airport is how do you do indoor navigation, especially when you're tight on time.
Yeah.
When you don't have them, finding things is a great thing. Like you had a lounge access and you can find it where you go. But what happens if as you're on the way, or maybe when you're at the lounge, it's like, by the way, for an extra 5,000 points, you could upgrade. Now, we know that that exists on an app, but how many of us are actually going to take our phone out when we're going to lounge access? Most likely we're taking out our passport in order to show our ID to get in. Then we're getting in as fast as possible to sit down, to take a shower, or to relax. Unless like the actual concierge asks us or lets us know about this. And here with augmented reality, we could show that coupon on the wall behind the lady, customized for you. Or when you pull out your passport or you pull out your credit card or you're pulling out any kind of information, we could have it hovering next to that and saying, by the way, you do have a coupon. By the way, you can upgrade to this. Or if you don't have a lounge pass, right, and you're walking through the airport, it's like, mate, you've got 6 hours to spend at this airport. There's not really any good places to sit. If you just use this amount of points, or if you just did this, it's taking us in the moment. It's not relying on us to open up a phone and open up a specific app to get that kind of information, but rather it's an advertisement, but it's not an advertisement that's flashing in front of our eyes when we're watching a movie. It's an advertisement at this specific time for what you're going for and helping you out. I actually want to be very careful with this because I very much do not want to see advertisements becoming like front and center. And I think if we do, it could become really, really bad.
Yes.
But if we can surface just the right amount without being too in your face and like making you do things that you don't want, with augmented reality, we could surface the right things that you want at the right time, understanding that you're in a rush or things, but getting you what you want. Like imagine coming out and then realize, oh, I did have a lounge pass and like I could have done that. Or I could have traveled in this place and I didn't know about this certain thing that could have allowed me to stay if you travel through certain countries, you can stay, at them for a couple of nights. Sometimes when you book with them, they're very good at telling you that. Not everybody tells you and says, you've got 15-hour layover, but did you know you can go and explore this beautiful mosque or you can go and do this great hike? And I think that's actually probably another thing that we can add to the airport. I think all the time I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about like just getting on the plane and like ending it there. So all my thoughts were like navigation in the airports.
Even stopovers. Coming up now on my flight, I was actually thinking that before to mention that. I've got a stopover in Singapore. I think my stopover is about 6.5 hours, 7 hours, whatever it is. I know that's obviously enough time to go out of the airport. It happens to be that a friend of mine from Melbourne over here, he's going to be in Singapore at the time. So we already made up that we're going to meet up there. And I guess with it, even if it's a clock or whatever it is, I can know how much time I have, how long it will take, or with AI, obviously, and if the tools are available, how long it will take me to get to certain places, to do things that I want to do during that stopover. And another thing to mention, I guess it could notify me, let's say my next flight gets delayed. That means I've got an extra 2 hours to explore Singapore. If it's delayed by 2 hours. I could get notified right away. I mean, I know that they already have things of getting notified, but if it like pops up right away, then I know right away.
Yeah.
I won't be on my taxi on my way back.
You make a very good point. Like things can be available today, but the way that it works is that phone's in your pocket. And unless you're specifically looking for something, which usually when you're in that mode of I'm rushing to a plane or I've got so much time in this city, but I need to make the most of it. The last thing you're doing is looking up last minute things or finding out certain pieces of information, which technically you could get if you know how to look for it, if you go to an app. But what we're saying here is one of the powers of augmented reality, the fact that it is contextual, it's always available, it's unearthing the things that it knows that you need to know at this point. And it's gathering all those and giving it to you in such a way that you can easily digest it because it's not requiring you to know that you have to take out a phone. It's not requiring you to have your hands free. It's not requiring you to sit still for a second and not run to catch a train. Because a lot of these times when we come, we've planned a little bit of the trip, right? But because we don't know what's going on in the area, we need a lot of aid that we don't necessarily know. And to expand upon it, like what you were saying is like when you're going to travel, you're going to meet up with a friend. So a lot of just the travel part makes it so much simpler because this guy probably knows the city or he has a car. But imagine coming to a place and you're using foreign public transport. There are a few things that we'll do before a trip, right? There's some things that will make sure that we have a certain visa or we'll have a certain currency, but we can't make sure that we know everything. So
like direction, even like reading, you go to a foreign country, even recently when I was in Bangkok, I remember I also had a stopover and I went out to get some food and going to the subway, not all the signs are translated in English, if we could have AR that, automatically translate the signs or I know exactly where to go, which stop to get off, it will be so much easier than trying to figure it out. Or even these days, Google has the little lens thing that you could translate. Sometimes I use that, but if it'll automatically translate for me and the translation will be there, will make it much easier.
When we come to a place, like, yes, we can have a translation app, but having it right there in front of our eyes and opening up these things, translation is a great example. If all the signs were automatically in your language, where you're not pulling out a phone and trying to scan it for a little bit and trying to get it to work, but in front of you, it's Google Lens, or I think it was called World Lens before that, that in front of you in your glasses is going to be a game changer. Seeing money and being able to see the currency exchange rate, where it either says when you pick up a bill, it'll tell you the bill and it'll say in brackets something, $1 American or $3 Australian. Or seeing even the current
do the calculations. Yeah, definitely. That's a big one. Because a lot of the times I remember I'm in a store, wherever it is in a foreign country, and I try to do the calculations in my head, or a lot of the time I whip out my phone and just go on the currency app and I'm like, how much is this worth? Because I think in Australian dollars, because that's where I'm from, is like, how much is it worth in that currency? If it automatically, I know it sees the price, it automatically knows how much it is, so much easier.
It'll also help us getting ripped off.
Yeah.
And it'll help us understand even notes. So maybe counterfeiting it could solve, because it could use its vision. It might not be able to see certain things. Like in Australia, you need an ultraviolet light to be able to see certain markings on it. Certain holograms come up in certain ways. You look at it, or in UV, or if you put it against the light, you can see the other backing of it, the other side. There's a lot of security features. But going to a new country, you can easily get scammed and not knowing if the note is real. But you can also be scammed by the actual value of the currency. So to be able to pull out the currency that you've bought in cash and directly see on top of that either the equivalent Australian note or the equivalent American note, and it has a total, okay, as you pull out the bills in front of you, it's counting out the total for you, and it's like, okay, yep, genuine, okay, we're going to count that as 10. Okay, another genuine. So all the genuine notes, it counts out and has a running total next to you. That will save so much hassle because we're solving a few things. We're not just looking at the value. Okay, if we wanted to know the value, we'll go to xe.com on our phone. Okay, great. But we also want to know if it's counterfeit. Most people are not going to check that or know what to check that. Using computer vision, we can understand all those different things, the currency exchange rate and a calculator. It's totaling it up in the current currency and totaling up in the currency I understand. So I get a full understanding at the end while I'm pulling it out. And then I can also understand, does this make sense or am I getting ripped off? I think that's a big thing. And what I wanted to say before was the public transport. Catching the right bus with the right numbers.
100%.
And sometimes you don't even have, you don't necessarily have, let's say, data, or you might have limited data, or you might be stuck behind a country's internet limitations, which we've been to quite a few countries that like you can't use Google or things like that. But to be able to have basic things like numbers and all computer vision, be able to decipher something on a bus, it doesn't require you to go to a special app and to find that specific public transport, or having downloaded them but offline before, or even understanding why a bus is different than another bus. Seeing the numbers, it automatically will track it. So if it knows that you're taking, let's say, B31 and it sees a B31, you don't necessarily know that Bs are different colors than Ds, or this is not the right place to go. It could highlight that bus from afar, right? It could make it pulsing red, or it could have like a little icon, like, the Sims diamond hovering above people. Imagine if your bus, out of 50 buses, and you're in a foreign country and you don't know what color to look for or the different line numbers, and you don't know exactly where to wait, it could show you where to go to from a kilometer away. It really solves it. It's a lot more important than in your hometown or the countries that you go to regularly and that you get to know the public transport system. Here you're here for 24 hours, you're here for 3 days. You don't know what to look out for or finding the right taxi. Someone might come to you and claim their Uber. Sometimes Ubers will have like the icon, but this would be security-wise. It'll match up the license plate. Actually, in Egypt, I had this problem where the license plates on Uber set it in numbers, right? Because we're used to numbers and we're used to like every license plate having actual numbers. In Egypt, the number's in Arabic. So when you're looking for the license plate, Uber's telling you G346, and then when you look at the actual license plate, it's an Arabic character.
Yeah, and you have no idea if it's yours or not.
I don't know how to read that number. It's almost like going to Israel and instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4 C, it would say Aleph, Bet, Chet, Shin. A foreigner would have no idea how to read that license plate. The letter's going to be in your alphabet. But a number?
So that's why you'll need to translate it.
Even better than translate it, I can highlight it and just say, this is your car. Because at the end of the day, I don't care about the license plate. In some cases, I do care about the license plate. In this case, what AR is answering very quickly is this my car? Because that's all you want to know about if an Uber's coming.
Or in how long it's coming as well. Yeah. As it's approaching, which one do you get into, or how many times has it happened? You're in the airport, or when you call an Uber. I know it's happened to me a lot of times in the airport. They don't know exactly where you are because it can get a little confusing. Are you on this level? Are you on that level? No, this way it's highlighted. They know exactly where you are. You know exactly where it is, and you can easily find it and get into the right car. Exactly. Instead of manually scanning and checking the number plates. And sometimes it could be chaos if it's busy. If it's just highlighted or blinking or whatever it is on top, then so much easier.
It's a game changer. I think Lyft introduced like colors, or maybe Uber also put in something else afterwards. It was like, okay, we know there's a lot of Ubers or Lyfts at an airport, so we're going to introduce colors. So your app is going to show purple, and then you look for a car that has a purple color dot in the front, and then you know how to match up. But this is taking it a step further. I can see the purple dot when it passes right in front of me, but if there's something hovering, I could see it a kilometer away. I could know am I in the right spot to even find Ubers, or is the car park C over there? Again, in Egypt, it wasn't so simple to understand the car park because the Google Maps or Uber wasn't explaining well how to get to the car park, and it was up some stairs, down some stairs, and you're trying to navigate people, and you've just landed in a foreign country. You're being blasted not only with the heat of the day, but all the people that are staring at you because you look so foreign, and the different language, and all you know is you've got a couple pointers from some friends who have pointed out, oh, learn how to do this because this is what you're going to want to know to look out for. Okay, great. So they've told me 3 things to look out for. But there's so many things that nowadays I've spent so much time trying to figure out that with augmented reality, pointing it out, highlighting it, translating it, converting it, would have made it just that much easier to go traveling with. I think while traveling, finding the public transport, are you at the right line? Is it the right train? Is it the right platform? Having a timer in front of you, the train is coming in this long, the Uber is coming in that long. You've got this much time to be back in the airport. And if it calculates for you and says, based on the train and everything, you must leave the city at this and this time to make it back. All these things directly in front of you while you're still enjoying the city. Because at the end of the day, when you're going out, you're going for sightseeing. You don't want to be on your phone. But if we had that highlighted in front of you, projected in front of you in a certain position, on the ground, that when you're looking up around you, you're enjoying it, but you can just glance down a tiny bit and you can see, okay, I've got a quick timer. I know how to find the bus. There's maybe an arrow that's pointing at the station at all times that's moving around. So it's always letting me know what distance and what direction I need to be pointing in if I need to get somewhere.
We could take it a step further. I don't know how, I guess we're going a bit away from airports, but more, I guess, into travel. You just mentioned sightseeing and stuff like that. With sightseeing, can literally become your tour guide.
We did an episode on hiking. We got into diving with DL a couple episodes ago, but this is taking it to the next level of sightseeing. And I'm wondering if we should, I don't even know how long we've been going for, but I wonder if we should leave sightseeing to another one, but give us one example maybe of sightseeing. Because I remember when I was in Israel, we were going to see one of the, there's ruins by the, I've got an idea. Do you have something for sightseeing you want to share?
I mean, it's just in general, literally, you go to any country, any landmark, whatever it is, instead of having a physical tour guide there, you can have this AR and it could literally pop up what the different history. I mean, Israel would be a great example because there is a lot of history over there. There's a lot of different things. Even just walking through the old city over there's a lot of things to talk about. This house was this was that back in the day. You know, there's so many different things to talk about, which half the time you probably walk through the old city, you pass by it, you don't even notice it.
I think we actually do need a thinking that the one was either sightseeing or maybe using augmented reality to see the future and see the past. I think that would be a great episode to go into. But just to give one idea on that, we're going to make a whole other episode for this. But one idea is, this is what I saw in this when I went sightseeing over here. And you see it in every other place. You come up to it and you see some ruins. So you see a couple bricks, or you see the shape of the building. Or in Israel, you have a lot of mosaic tiles that are still left over from the ancient synagogues that were there from thousands of years ago. And from what I was seeing is, imagine if I could see this building reconstructed as it looked back then. To help you guys visualize it, it'll show you the Colosseum and a pencil type of sketch. It'll show you the vague Colosseum of what it looked like when it was full. You've got some visualizations where you see the blueprint versions. The current version is full and solid, and the history is blueprint. And so I approached this temple and I was like, imagine if, with augmented reality, I just saw these bricks, maybe as if I stepped into the vicinity of this castle that I think was then a fortress against one of the invading countries at the time. Imagine if rocks just started flying around me. The way I was visualizing it was the reverse of the cyclone in Wizard of Oz. Yeah. All these bricks like circling around me, and linen, carpet drapes, and the busts, knights, the metal statues, and wooden doors and door bridges just started, they're all hovering around me like this hurricane. And then they start attaching themselves, and then they fall down to the points of where they are. And the whole building back in the day just gets constructed around me. And now I can walk around and experience the different rooms, or open the door to walk back out and circle the entire place. Now I'm walking in the real world. And obviously we need guardrails to make sure you don't walk into the street or off a cliff. Imagine if you're walking around and it looks as real as the bricks look like today, but as the building looked. And it almost as if you were transported back in time and were able to see the building. And on top of that, visit people from the past. But this is going into history. It's going a lot more.
I've got a question on that note. Where do you draw the line with that? Because I know there's a lot of people, and I think you've spoke about it previously, when people first hear of AR, the first thing that comes up is virtual reality. Yeah. So where is that, I guess, in that, what you just described, where do you draw the line between VR and AR?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And this is something I think that it's great to go into this in every scenario because it helps solidify. The difference between AR and VR in this scenario is I've actually come to the real historical site and I'm walking in the real site. Now, if I stepped into this while being at home, right? So if while sitting at home on the couch or on a chair or on a beanbag, and I slipped on a pair of virtual reality glasses and I transported myself to another location, like the seaside in, this Israeli city, that would be virtual reality. I can experience something completely real and historical, but if I'm not physically there, and if it's not augmenting the reality I'm in, it's a virtual reality. But yeah, there is a very fine line between them. And it's why the way that I describe augmented reality and virtual reality is it's a spectrum, right? On one end of the spectrum, you've got reality, or let's call it base reality. And the other end of the spectrum, you've got virtual reality. This is completely virtual. You can do whatever you want. You can immerse yourself. You can get into crazy worlds. You've completely left this world behind, right? You can feel like you're walking in that world. You can feel like you're smelling that world. You can feel like you're walking, biking, any kind of way that you interact with the world. You can be completely immersed in a completely virtual world. That's all virtual reality. Now, augmented reality is anywhere along that spectrum between base reality and virtual reality, augmented reality, where you're donning a pair of glasses or you're wearing a pair of contact lenses and you're experiencing the world as a base layer. So my hands are free to the world, right? My natural senses are all free to the real world, but they can be overlaid with extra pieces of information, right? Arguably, you can say that a phone could be some sort of augmented reality because it's adding something into your world. But that would be so close to base reality where you're adding something physical that contains a virtual reality. Have you ever seen that visualization of dropping a coin into the well and there's like a whole other world underneath it? You're in the world, but then like you put your head under the water and suddenly you're in a whole new world. That computer, that phone is a 2D pane of glass where I almost feel like I'm rippling through, and when I see through that glass, I get the digital world, but I'm only seeing a glimpse of it. I'm only seeing a small keyhole of it, a small window, right? I'm getting a 2D flat experience of that world. And usually the apps we do, because it's so limited, the apps that we work with are also quite limited. Like if I'm watching YouTube, I'm not really doing so many other things. I'm not like getting information about a different currency, or there's no depth to the world. I'm focusing usually on one, maybe two apps if I multitask. So one is looking at a small keyhole and seeing like a little pond, and the other one is like poking your head in it and having a portal into a crazy world, and then jumping into that. So that's what augmented reality is. It's opening up the digital world to kind of layer itself on top of the real world. Now, when you do that, it can be as complex, as dense as you want it, because augmented reality needs to work on all contexts, right? When you look at the world around you, it's not just the physical world you see. There's so much context behind it that we don't visually see, but we know, right? We know that there's a relationship between that TV screen and the electricity that's pumping in the. We know that it must be in some way connected to the lights because both of them have to be on an electronic circuit. When we look at two people, we know that there's a relationship layer underneath. And we know that different people are friends with different people, and some people have romantic relationships with other people, and some people have bad relationships with other people, and some people have familial relationships. But all of that is a web of relationships that's hovering underneath base reality.
Yeah. So like what we were saying before about whatever this architectural site and you know what it was historically to build that, I guess it was just more about those effects that you were talking about of bricks surrounding you and all of that. I mean, it's not there, but it's more got to do with what it looks like now, what it looked like back then, and then we can add whatever effects we want to it as well.
So at the end of the day, augmented reality is you're augmenting your reality, right? You're adding something to it. Now, today, Apple's using the term spatial computing. I talk about how I agree with that in a sense because I never liked the ideas of mixed reality and extended reality, those terms, because I believe that those terms were given to something that was unnecessary. I believe that that was AR. And mixed reality was a term that Microsoft gave to it to differentiate itself from Google, who at the time was erroneously using augmented reality. I don't know if you remember or if you know of the Google Glass. So that was kind of marketed as augmented reality, when in reality, no pun intended, it was actually heads-up display. Now, what's the difference between heads-up display and augmented reality, you might ask? The difference is the context. It's the understanding behind it. A heads-up display just shows you a piece of information in front of your eyes. It's a transparent screen, and its job there is just to show you transparent pixels, just the same way that you'll see on a watch or a phone. Right? The difference between just a regular heads-up display and augmented reality is the context behind it. It's the understanding the world behind it. So if I want to show you information, a heads-up display would make it look like there's a bit of text hovering here, where augmented reality would go, oh, I understand that there's a wall over here and there's surfaces, because maybe he wants to grab it, or maybe he wants to work with that in a physical dimension, so I'm going to allow it to be in a place that's not only easy for him to see, but also he can, quote-unquote, reach up and grasp it. I might be getting a little bit meta over here, so I'm going to pull back from this, but it's a little glimpse. When you move from the 2D world and you move from like how the phones and laptops work with a flat interface and thinking that everything works in apps, and moving from that into a spatial world which not only has dimension to it, but also has context to it, there's very different ways that you're going to interact with that device. And it's not always going to be just clicking a virtual button. We now have to think of how that person wants to interact with it or how he can interact with it. And I might put that at different distances depending on that. Or I might hide it underneath a table and have it peep out when it needs to, because that's the kind of frame that I associate myself to that piece of information or that part of the digital world. There's lots of ways that we're going to interact with those pieces, and they're going to act very differently because we have a contextual world, because we have a spatial world. So to bring it back to Apple using the term spatial computing, I don't mind it because it doesn't seem to be so much of, no, because it is a marketing term because Apple, everything's about marketing. But it doesn't seem to be a marketing term of going, let's give you another word that uses the word reality that tries to explain what our little niche is. So is it mixed reality? Is it extended reality? Everyone was having their own like little word to make a little nuanced difference of why I'm different, when in reality, they were all just different parts of augmented reality on that spectrum between base reality and virtual reality. When you come to this world, spatial computing still makes sense because that's what it is. It's a computer that's suddenly now spatial. It's expanding beyond this small peephole, this small little window into the digital world, and it's expanding spatially. Bringing this back, we kind of started off at the airport, and then we went to, okay, this is not just limited to indoor navigation and looking for my counter. It also can be indoor navigation where you're finding your gate and putting timers. And then we kind of move from there and go, 1 second, why are we stopping just before we get on the plane? Let's talk about after that. So we actually didn't even talk about the plane itself.
I was thinking that because there's so much. I mean, I don't know about how much there is, but obviously on the plane itself, there would be a bunch. And I mean, one of the things that I thought about as well is about the pilot. Yeah. Actually, you know, flying the planes and all of that. I'm sure there's a lot of things that AR can help with that.
There's a lot of things that AR already does in military jets. So like the F-35 has a lot of augmented reality built into it. But like what you're saying is bring that to regular pilots. For any of you who are not familiar with the F-35, you've got this thing is laden with technology, but the actual helmet that the fighter pilot wears, I think it's about $500,000 just for the helmet itself. And what it has augmented reality inside of it to help it lock onto targets with just eye tracking, right? Or looking through the plane. So the plane has cameras all around it. It's actually interesting when you look into fighter jets, there is a trade-off between how much can I put out to not mess around with the actual with the design of the airplane. But over here with augmented reality, what it does is it uses cameras on all parts of the airplane. So when the pilot looks below him, he doesn't see his feet or the floor of the jet. He sees below the jet. He sees if there's another jet silently underneath him. And he can look in all directions, 360 degrees. And he sees basically through the plane as if there's no plane around him.
Is the technology, they have it down packed where, you know, the likely chances of a collision or, you know, from time to time, obviously aircrafts do go near each other, but for them with all the, I guess, navigation in the air, I don't think there's a very likely chance that they will be next to each other. But I guess when it comes to landing and takeoff, that's probably where the most danger is. And if with AR, there could be some sort of path, or even obviously with the wind, again, I'm not a pilot, I don't know in detail how it all works, but I'm sure with AR, there could be a clear path of where the pilot needs to go when it is about to land or about to take off or just took off and to go into the correct...
Landing at airports is not always as simple as we know it. A documentary actually I just watched a couple weeks ago, which talked about America came to a point where they thought they were so technologically superior that they didn't need to engage in a dogfight. They thought those days were over. They found that the Russians had made a plane that was much better at them at certain speeds, and they were coming back to actually having to go in dogfights until they then came up with a more superior airplane years later. They thought that the technology solved it, but in reality, they actually ended up in more dogfights than they thought they would be. They thought that was a past era of World War II. The chance that someone comes underneath you, you still want to have a clear view of the sky. But also there's like missile seeking, locking onto a plane with your eyes and not with a joystick. Like these are things that are built into the F-35 helmet. And there's some really crazy augmented reality technology. Before I come back to the pilot's idea and having this kind of technology for pilots, like there was another documentary, this is going back a couple months ago, of near case collisions of jets, how close they were to like actually veering off the runway or crashing into another plane. And one story was two airplanes that came, and usually traffic control is supposed to be the communication between them. But because of a variety of low weather, low visibility, traffic controller not really understanding what they said at one moment, not responding, radios going down, the very close call, they nearly crashed. They were within a couple hundred meters of another airline that was being directed for the same runway as they were. Now, if you had augmented reality, so you can see the people that have radar and they've got all this information on their screens, they can see these blips, they can see these things from far away. If each pilot, maybe they don't have it the whole flight, but within 10 minutes, 20 minutes of landing, they should be able to visually see the pathways and where other planes are from where they are, right? So maybe an airline, maybe you can't see another plane because it's still outside of visible range, right? You can't visibly see it, or you've got clouds in the way, or you're banking at a different degree and you don't see the physical airplane itself. If you could see an overlay that you could see the exact path right in front of you, and you can see where the airplane is and a little arrow, not being left to just a screen of someone who's in a control tower supposed to be talking with me. But if I could see those paths visually, I see a line coming from my airplane down to the runway I'm supposed to do. Because remember also, a lot of problems happen because different runways have different markings, and some runways are numbered based on the direction that the airport is facing, right? North, south, east, west. There's different markings for that. The way you number them is different. So a lot of problems happen from pilots not reading it correctly, which one's right or which one's north-south, or those kind of headings that normal runways are labeled. They don't realize that there's two runways with the same, they're both facing north, so they're both ends, for example, but like one's N21, one's N24. If you could visually see a line, like you have in Google Maps, it's called Follow the Yellow Road in the Tesla, where the lane you're meant to be on is colored, and you're not going to have a question. You don't need to know about, is it going to be in 200 meters, or do I take a left? The lane you're on is painted. Here, you also see the line from your plane. And if you see someone else's line from their plane coming in at the same angle and then onto your runway, it's very easy to see what the issues are. Numbers and all the headings and all the things that had messed up the pilots in these near cases and sometimes fatal accidents, you would actually reduce them because everybody would have that visual of going, okay, I see exactly where the path is. And we could all see that two things are not supposed to converge onto the one.
It takes out, I guess, the human error in there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, it could be that, for some reason you read something wrong, whatever it is, or you hear one thing, you remember another thing. But I guess if you actually physically see that, it does take out the human.
It's very important to know, as skilled as humans are, there's so many errors that happen. Like when you read a word differently because you were thinking about another word, or where you're so used to doing something that you keep doing in a different scenario, and you don't realize that that's what your error coming from. Or you're not familiar, errors that non-familiarity, where you know generally where they're supposed to be, but maybe they built a new runway since the last time you came, or maybe they changed the numbering system because they realized it wasn't as accurate. A bunch of things could happen. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that humans are fallible. We do make mistakes, and that's fine. But the problems are when they become deadly. And we don't always know what to look out for before they become deadly. And sometimes we can solve them with these very simple vision.
Yeah, that's one way to solve it. But I guess another way would be if planes remove the pilot altogether. But I don't think we're there yet.
We are actually a lot closer than we think. I think they say something like 70 or 80% of the flight is already automated. And the big parts is
Takeoff and landing. Yeah.
But we already have systems that are better than pilots in how to maintain the right degree, so you can't go above 30 degrees tilt in a plane in any direction, because I think that the tests were that that's not very good. You can get woozy, or not everybody can deal with them. There's like a limit. They have systems already that have takeoff and landing. It's teaching them how to deal with situations that they're not ready for. And I think that it would be interesting to see if Tesla does solve full self-driving. And it looks like with number 12 that they're probably on the way to doing it. They solve it with vision. Now, I think that they should be including radar and all these things as backup, because I think they removed it. I think you should always have backup cases, right? If you have an automated system that's only running on vision, it's still got limitations, like what happens if there's fog or at light. There's certain things that it still can't see. And radar will help you in those places where the ground is not just icy, but reflective, right? So it might tell you different pieces of information. The rain messes it up. So I do believe that you should always have the systems as backups to help you out. Going vision only is a very important thing, because that's how humans drive, and that's the only way that will properly solve it without having to map out everything. So I think that the more that those things accelerate, the better that computer vision will also go on planes. Not only will you have all the flight maps and all the accurate measurements, and you will also get computer vision that will help you differentiate between, a flock of geese and an actual engine that's completely died. Be able to deal with thunderstorms or things that you're not prepared for, but be able to be trained for that, which will help getting rid of them and also saving lives.
Yeah, but that's, I guess, also where AI is in, and it learns based off these different scenarios. It puts all the different scenarios, and we'll obviously have to admit that computers are way more powerful than humans, and it can actually take into account a lot of this and can learn based off previous scenario.
Yeah, I think it's also a good time to like explain like AI. And very simply, I think that AR is kind of like the body. Like, let's say if you're going to say like the digital self, AR is like the body, right? The senses. AR is the digital mind, right? It's the way of understanding. So AR will be on a piece of hardware that has cameras that use computer vision to understand the world. But how is computer vision working? Through machine learning, right? So it's using the intelligence. So the same way that when we receive information through our retina, that gets piped through, the brain is the one actually decoding it, and that's actually what we're seeing with. Computer vision is specifically the way you're receiving it from the cameras, right? There's many different ways of receiving information. AR is being able to help visualize and work and be that digital senses, so like sight, all those different things. AI is the brains behind it that's using all that data to process it and then help make it actually actionable.
I was just about to say, it's the brains behind it. It can't work properly without it because you need the AI to have the AR there.
They go together just like a human needs a brain and a brain needs senses and a body. That's what we need over here. We went quite deep. We did not stop at the airport. We did not stop at just traveling. A thing to also mention, I think, is the first thing we would think about in a plane. You're passing Mount Fuji or something. Show me landmarks when I look out the window, right? Augmented reality could highlight them, animate them. If I'm passing over a piece, I'd like to know like what suburb is this, or...
Have you ever seen, there's a lot of people out there, and I mean, myself included, you have the screens in front of the plane, you like to see where the plane is going and where you are exactly. Well, imagine you're flying over a place and you actually can see that.
Yeah.
In reality, obviously not reality, in AR.
It's reality, but AR is helping you see what you're seeing.
Exactly. You're still there because you are flying over those places. But instead of having the plane or, you know, looking out the window, you could actually get a full view of whatever view, as you said, passing by Mount Fuji, whatever it is, and you want to see the beautiful landscapes. There you go. You can go and see it.
Yeah, I guess there's two ways that we can see it. One is I'm looking out the window now and I'm seeing Mount Fuji, and then like over it, there's visualizations of like, this is a hike that might be interested. Or like if you know that you're coming a place and you've marked it on your calendar, it says, hey, this is Mount Fuji, you got an appointment, your hike is here on the 26th, you'll finally get to the top of it, and it'll show you the path you took from bird's eye view.
Yeah. But on a plane, I think the likely chance of you actually passing by the spots where you're going.
But the chance is high. It's that when you do see it, it's available because it's a piece of information that can come up. It could also show you other things and says, hey, this is a river and it's beautiful to do things here. So it could also be a way of exploring a city as you're passing over or you're circling to land. It could use that information to very basically tell you the name of the city. It could show you that just as I'm looking out. But it could also then overlay what you're about to do there, or things that are nice to see, right? I go over and it says, let's say you're flying over Vegas. It can point out the different attractions, the different cinemas, the Sphere, the different buildings over there that, you know, when I was coming into land into Egypt, I was looking out for the pyramids. Now it's hard to miss them once you actually see them, but imagine if it's able to show me an arrow and say like, they're there in 200 meters and in 20 seconds they'll come into view, right? And then as the arrow comes in, as it comes into view, it highlights them with a shape on the outline of the triangles to help like visually represent them. And say, these are the triangles, or give them the names, right? This is the big one, this is the medium one. As you're passing through all these things, there's a chance of getting to know the area from a bird's eye view as you're coming in.
It would work, I think, also much more well than, I guess, just a commercial flight if you're taking a helicopter somewhere.
Yeah.
Or a helicopter tour or whatever it is. You know, with helicopters, obviously, you're just not flying over and quick, you know, that's it. You're actually going around, or if it's a tour, whatever it is, then obviously you'll be able to use it much more in that aspect.
And then imagine picking up that attraction that you're looking at down there, and the 3D representation is like now a hologram in front of you that you can manipulate and turn around. So that's what I was thinking when we were looking out, that you were, oh, if I took my tray table and now I have like a 3D version of like Mount Fuji, and I can see like a 3D map, a hologram right in front of me of a mini Mount Fuji just sitting on my tray table. And so I can see the elevation, and if I'm going to do a hike, it will show me the path and it will show me little different markers. But it's all there in a 3D map that I'm experiencing on my tray table.
Yeah, I was thinking more of seeing outside of the plane. So you're sitting there, but you're seeing what is outside the plane, not necessarily just over there. That's what I was thinking. So it's like similar to like the map. You know exactly where you are in the world, where you're flying over. I know a lot of people, when in the plane, they want to know, I guess, firstly, how long left to the flight as well. That'd also be a nice thing to have. A lot of people have that, so if it's just easily accessed, that's obviously another good thing. But also, not just see where in the world you are, but see if it's daytime, see it at nighttime, see the stars, see what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things. Exactly. The stars, seeing the constellation, seeing them pointing out. There's so many things. Okay. Wow. We've covered a lot. We've done the airport, we've done the plane, we've done stopovers, and obviously the destination. But like that idea, like I'm just thinking now like about Poland. Like I came in, I had a couple hours to do things in. You know you're limited, but you want to take the most of it. So you're running, but like you need to know like a train's about to arrive, but am I walking in the airport? Like there's not many apps that are showing me when the train is coming that I'm easily able to get it, that I've downloaded beforehand and I've dealt with it. But here it knows, okay, you're in the city, let's show you the path of the train and it's coming in 12 minutes. Okay, the pace you're walking, you're not going to make it run. If that's in front of you while your hands are full, you don't get that experience at all with a phone. Then finding the train, highlighting maybe where I need to pay for before I get to the train, getting on there and finding your seat, right? Having that highlight. Then having the station highlight or explain to me that like this is the station to get off and not fall asleep and not realize where you need to get off. Taking me a self-guide through the city. Oh, I want to go through the old city. I want to check that out. Okay, guide me through like a nice path. Like I'm actually getting that on the road in front of me. It's all in a schedule of when I need to finish and then get back on the train. All those paths are showing me. In this way, it's difficult to get lost, right? Then you got the added currency things that we talked about, the different times in front of you to make sure that you're coming back at the right time, the different languages to help you out.
Signs, translating signs.
And translation's coming to such a huge leap. I think a question to ask ourselves, what are we trying to achieve here? I would venture and say that if there was no communication barriers, if we reduced all communication barriers, the world would become an easier place to travel. I believe a safer place to travel. I think misunderstanding is a lot of where issues come from. If you start speaking the same language, and not that like we're forcing everyone to now speak one language, but everyone can still speak their native language with all its beauty.
Yeah. There's a lot of beauty with I think in general, anything that can be used for good, unfortunately can be used for bad as well. So it's about like where you draw the line. Some stuff, you think about it all. Right now it sounds crazy, but as you start seeing the good that could come out of it, usually the good overlays the bad.
Yes. You just got very philosophical. We gotta rein it back. It's an augmented reality podcast. No, what you said is so true. Language is important. Communication is key. The way that I see it, some of these things can be scary if you look at the bad.
Yeah.
But imagine the good. Imagine stepping up in any country and be able to just converse with the locals. There is a beauty to be bilingual. There's a beauty to learn language.
There's a beauty about also everyone's own culture and everyone's own, them speaking that native language. We don't want to lose that. But being able to communicate, and I guess I've also felt this in the past, sometimes there is that language barrier where you can't communicate or you can't understand something, or you just want to ask someone a friendly chat. They're so friendly, but you've got that barrier, that language barrier. So that would, I guess, be cool if we can communicate that way.
Sometimes having a barrier is endearing, or sometimes having a barrier is how it removes our walls and allows us to go out of our comfort zone and do something that ends up actually advancing us, makes us smarter, wiser, stronger, all those things. But I think the beauty of this is it's digital world. And again, it's the spectrum. You can choose how much you want it. You could say in this trip, I'm just rushing, I need to get to certain places, so I need to know directions, versus, oh, this is a leisure trip that I'm getting to know people. I'm going to dial all the way up.
And get in their culture, listen to what they're doing. Just, if you don't understand each other, humans can interact without actually, like there's body language, there's a lot of other things that you can understand each other.
And you can use that as a training. You can say, have that ramp down from like seeing everything in my language to seeing everything in the native language. And once we build that you can have both those sides, we can have that training ramp and you say, listen, over the next week, I would like to ramp down to like 20%, right? Let's say that's learning the 0% is speaking native tongue. So if you want to ramp it down to 20 over the next week, some billboard suddenly stops showing you an English word here and there, right? So you start associating it. Sometimes you speak to people and some words filter, the native words actually, or the native sentence filters through. And so where I was used to hearing all English in translation, I'm now hearing English and then one line French and back to English, moving along the next week until it comes to a point where 20% of the words or 20% of the things I'm seeing are English and 80% is French. That's how I'm immersing and teaching myself the language as we move along.
Yeah.
There's so much to do in traveling. So much that augmented reality could help us, make it easier, not get lost, teach us, learn things, communicate. I think that we could probably easily go on for another
Oh,
podcast.
100%. I feel like you need to go so many other things. Like you go into accommodation, you go into so many different things. There's even just walking the street in foreign countries, you know.
Yeah. But I think right now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our gate for boarding and take that flight and enjoy all the things that could possibly happen. What I'm going to say that was a very interesting podcast. Mendel.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for adding.
It was good fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
We went on quite a journey. I don't know what next episode is going to be. There's quite a few more with extreme sports. I think we had one with architecture. Thanks for bringing that up. I think I have a big one with generative AI and architecture and the future of that. We want to talk about security and project management and working on projects in the physical space as opposed to how it works today. There's a lot more to do in the day. And there's a lot more augmented reality things that are going to radically change how we work with computers and how we live our lives. We've seen how it's going to completely change travel from getting on the plane to flying on the plane and getting to your destination. There's a lot more podcasts coming up. I just want to say thanks for joining me. Thanks for adding to it. And for everybody else listening, if you've got any questions, comments, please put them down in the comments below. And if you travel in the next couple of weeks, like Mendel is going in 2 weeks to Singapore, Thailand, and then Israel, if you're ever traveling in the near future, tell me what parts of this episode you actually found yourself looking around the airport or looking around the plane or looking around the new country you've just gone in and gone, whoa, that would have really changed my experience. That would have helped me out there. Please share all those stories. And if you have an idea that you come to the airport and you're like, whoa, I could really, finding my way to the gate is really neat, but imagine if I could also do this, or imagine if that happened. I want to hear those. Put them in the comments below, message me, comment on all your experiences. Would love to hear it. And if you've got ideas for future episodes that we touched upon, like architecture and the like, and you want your idea to be featured, message me as well, and we'll see if it's a good enough one, we'll include it. For right now, I'm going to say thanks for that, and I'll see you guys in the future.